Hello YouTube gardeners, my name is Brad Ani. I have started a new channel here on YouTube and it took a while for me to decide on the name, but I think I've decided on Diary of a Curious Gardener. Now I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to myself, who I am and why I chose that name. I started out growing in a grow box with my dad when I was just a kid. He had probably a 40 or 50 foot grow box in the back of his yard, and every year we would turn the soil by hand with a shovel and plant different things. He had a whole bunch of fruit trees and he kind of did what we would call foodscaping nowadays. He had different edible plants throughout the entire yard, front and back, and it was before foodscaping was really a thing. But he was really interested in having the edible part of the edible aspect of gardening, and so I grew up doing that. And when I was 12 years old, I actually had a neighbor who had a vegetable farm, a produce farm, and I got a job with them when I was 12 years old, and I worked for them for years and really learned how to value hard work, and really kind of grew a love for watching things grow and tending to fields and crops and reaping the benefits. I loved it. We were able to have lots of really good fruit and vegetables that came from that farm. We'd sell them at a farm stand on the side of the road here in Salt Lake City, a suburb of Salt Lake City called West Valley City. That's where I grew up. Anyway, they taught me a lot when I worked there, and it changed and helped make me who I am today. After that, I went through high school working at a place that did landscaping and groundskeeping, lots of planting flowers and maintaining the grounds, and it was a different aspect that I hadn't really focused on. Like I mentioned with my dad, it was mostly just not too many things as far as flowers unless they happen to be edible as well. So it was fun to get that side of things. But when I first got married, I hadn't gone to college yet, and we were fortunate enough to get a house 2 weeks after we got married, but it was a major fixer-upper. However, there was a clear area in this house. It was built in 1954. It was a pretty old house. They had a clear area where there was a garden in the past. Right now, when we bought it, it was totally overgrown with weeds, and it needed a lot of work. But back then I practiced tilling, and I went in, invested with my dad and my brother, and bought a tiller so we could carry it around to different houses, drive it around different houses and use it. Whoever needed it in our family could use it. But again, back then I did till my garden. I now practice no-till practices, or no-till gardening, I should say, or low-till gardening. And that house, though, when I first tilled it, I couldn't believe how lucky I was. It had to have had 20 years worth of soil amendments going into that. As soon as I cleared the weeds off and tilled it, I could stick my arm in almost up to my elbow. And that's where I first really learned how to do a home garden. Instead of monocropping like I would deal with when I was working on the farm, it was a garden. I had peas next to beans, next to strawberries, next to some broccoli. I mean, it was all mixed in. And that taught me a lot about balancing the garden, balancing where the sunlight hits, and can't have tall plants in front of short plants if they both need the sun equally. But if a plant needs a little bit less sun, then you can plant a tall plant in front of that as far as the direction of the sun's concerned. But I really grew to love gardening then. At that point, I worked with a great friend of mine who is very serious into gardening and more on the flower side of things. And I remember looking at her thinking, man, how could you be that interested in flowers? You can't even eat them. That's just because that's the way I was raised. But fast forward to where I'm at now, and I'd say I do more flower gardening than I do vegetable gardening. I have young kids, so it's hard to have the time to upkeep a vegetable garden. I have other priorities is what it comes down to. But I like to cut flowers and bring them in, and I love the beauty that flowers offer, and I have since learned the value of having the flowers for helping pollinate the fruiting plants and the vegetables and stuff that I like to grow as well. There is plenty of evidence from people who have started growing flowers and how their vegetables, their edible crops, have increased in production big time. So that started to get me interested in kind of the whole ecosystem of a garden, and that's where I'm at today. I did study physiology when I went to school, and I graduated from the University of Utah with a physiology degree, but I had to take some biology classes for that too, and I really got to have a basic understanding of how things work down at the microscopic level and I really appreciate it and have such a love. And the more I dive into gardening and soil health and the ecosystem of the entire garden, including macro insects and microbiology, all of that stuff, up to birds and other wild animals that I have. I'm fortunate enough to live to where there's nobody behind me. The Oquirrh Mountain Range is behind my house, so I have no backyard neighbors over my fence. So I get a lot of extra wild animals and wild insects and stuff that can come right into my yard from that. I'm super lucky, and I'm really glad I bought this house and that we live here. We're really lucky to live here. I just wanted to mention that I have such a love for it. The more I dive into it and learn about the soil health and the plant health and ecosystem, the more I just love it. I can't get enough of it. And so many times I have been told by close friends of mine that I should just start a YouTube channel because I have worm farms, I have compost bins, I have bokashi compost. I have so many different kinds of composting that I just love doing. I have mealworms, red wigglers, I do bird feeding, I do bird watching. I do so many different aspects. I recently started getting into greenhouse, but I just love every aspect that I dive into, and I can't, I just soak it up and I try to learn as much as I can about any one of those facets. And it makes sense to me to go ahead and make a video or a whole bunch of videos. I've got a list of ideas of stuff that I want to share with you guys that I've learned and stuff that I'm doing. So with this, at the suggestion of people that I care about and people that are close to me, I'm going to start filming all of this and taking you guys along for the journey. I'm going to be working on a website and working on some logos and stuff for the YouTube channel, and I've got a bunch of videos already filmed. I'm going to be editing those and posting them, and hopefully soon we'll have some stuff to really get some content out there. And I'd love to hear back from you guys, feedback, and tell me what you want to hear. I've dabbled in a lot of stuff, and I've really dove deep in a lot of stuff, so I'd love to share what I've learned and maybe save you some of the mistakes, or hopefully lessen that learning curve that I had to go through, maybe make it a little bit less for you. But I appreciate your time. Please consider liking and subscribing. I would just love to get this content out there at this point. I'm not sure where this is going to lead exactly. I am a full-time stay-at-home dad, so I have lots of videos I'll be doing with my kids and some gardening I'll do with my kids, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old at this point, and I just love them to death. And I'm sure you'll get to meet them and know who they are too. So we'll take you along for the ride. Thanks.